Come on guys, today we are going to learn some very interesting topic, that is Docker networking. So why do we need Docker networks? Consider you have created two containers in a host. One is used to host your application and another one is used to host your DB, or you can call it as front-end and back-end containers. So obviously application should talk to DB, right? For that we need a Docker network here. There are multiple types of Docker networks. Default network is bridge network. So whenever you create a container inside a host, by default it will be part of bridge network. So here your host or VM will have its own IP address and container will have its own IP address. And generally CID range will be different. And the communication between the container and host will happen via bridge network. And if you create one more container called as C2, it will have different IP address, but it will have the same CID range as previous container. And it will also created in a bridge network only. And the communication between these two containers will happen via bridge network only. So bridge is the default network. And the second type is host network, and generally we don't use this network much. So in host network, the containers also have same CID range as the host. So if the host have 192.42.0.4 IP address, then the container will have 192.14.0.5. Both will have same CID range. So if I create one more container in a host network, it might have 0.6 address. This is not an efficient way of handling the network. That's why this is not used much. And the third type is overlay network. This is the popular network type, and this is mostly used in Kubernetes, Docker, Swarm. These kind of architecture we can use overlay network. There we will have multiple hosts or multiple nodes. And if you want a common network for both, you can have a overlay network there. So these are the three types of networkings. Now consider I have two containers, C1 and C2. And by default both the containers will be in bridge network and they can communicate with each other. What if I don't want this? What if C1 should not talk to C2? How can I achieve that? For that I can create custom bridge networks, and I can create different containers in different custom bridge network so that they will not communicate with each other. So enough of theories, let's go to demo now. Without wasting any time, let's create a container now. So to create a container I can run docker run and I will use 80 port only, and I'm going to create a nginx application. And let's see how in which network it will create. So then -d, then the image name, that is nginx. It will take a couple of seconds to create that. So it created a container now. Now let's check the network of this particular container. For that I can run docker inspect and the container ID. So once I run this, it will show the network details here. You can see the networks, and the network type is bridge, and it will have the gateway and IP addresses. Here IP address is IP of the container, that is 172.17.0.2 is the container IP address. Here gateway is nothing but the containers route to the outside network, and the first type will be the gateway IP address. If I create one more container, that will have the IP address 172.17.0.3, and this bridge network will have its own subnet range. If I run docker network inspect, then the network name, that is bridge, it will give the details of that particular network bridge network. Here you can see the subnet range. So by default the range will be 172.17.0.0/16, and the gateway containers all will have the IP range within this subnet. Also you can see the containers list in this particular bridge network. Now let's create two containers within the same network, then see how these both containers will talk to each other. I want to install some of the networking tools inside this particular containers. For that I am going to customize this particular nginx image. I have created a Dockerfile here. This is to install all the networking tools. I will give this Dockerfile in the description also. Let's create an image from this particular Dockerfile. I can just run docker build and the Dockerfile path, that is current directory. If I run docker images, this is the new image created. Let's create two containers from this particular image. Let's create first container using docker run. Then I will name this container as -name, and I will name it as C1. Then -d for detached mode. Then the image ID, the custom image we have created just now. Then also I want to give the network admin privileges while creating the container. This is because later I am going to change the IP route and other things. For that the network admin privilege is required. That's why I'm going to add another flag now. That's it. Let's run this command now. So container 1 is created, C1. Similarly, let me create C2 also. So C2 also created now. Let me run docker ps now. So both the containers are created, C1 and C2. Let me check the network details for both the containers. For that, I can run docker inspect c1. So I will get the network details here. I can see the IP address is 17.0.2 and the gateway is 0.1. And our bridge network is created. So by default, our bridge network will create and the container will be created in that particular bridge network. Similarly, if I check for C2, that is also same here. The IP address of C2 is 0.3 and the gateway is same and the network is same. That is bridge network. So by default, containers will be created in bridge network only. Now let me log into first container. For that, I can run docker exec -it, then c1, then the bash. So I'm logged into the container now. Here also I can check the IP of this particular container using hostname -i. So this is the container IP. I can curl this IP using curl http, then the IP address, that is 0.2. And I will get this response, that is welcome to nginx. And in both the containers, I will get this response only because the content is nginx content only in both of the containers. To differentiate both the containers, I want to change this content. For that, I can modify one of the file, that is index.html file basically. So vi index.html file, and I'm going to modify the content here. Instead of welcome to nginx, I can modify it to welcome to c1. I have modified the content so welcome to c1 in both the places here. And let me save this file. Let me do the curl again. So here I can see the content is welcome to c1. Let me do the same change in c2 also now. For that, I'm going to exit from this container and log into the c2 container. Save. And then docker exec to c2. I can check the IP of this c2 was here using hostname -i. That is 0.3. Let me modify the index.html file here also. Here also I am going to change to welcome to c2. So I have modified to welcome to c2 here, and let me save this file. Now if I do the curl to c2, the curl http 172.17.0.3. So I will get the welcome to c2 message now. By default, there should be internet connectivity, so I can ping to google.com also from this particular container. If I ping google.com, it will work. So this is the IP address, that is start with 142. Also, let me try to ping to my first container, that is 172.17.0.2. Now I am in C2 container. Let me ping to C1. I will get that response also. Here you can see I will get a response from 0.2. That is, I will get the response from C1 also from C2 container, because both of these containers are in the same network. That's why I am able to ping. If I check for traceroute for my C1, that is 172.17.0.2, I'll get only one entry because it will directly connect to my C1. If I do the same traceroute for google.com, the first entry will be my gateway address. That means whenever container is trying to reach outside world, it will first connect to my gateway. That is 0.1 is my gateway. So gateway will provide the route to the outside world for the containers. If I try to ping C1, it will not work. I will get the error like name or service not known. Let's solve this now. For this, I am going to create a custom bridge network. Let me create that. First, I will exit from this container. Then I have the command docker network create. Then the network name, I will name it as mynet. Then I can add a subnet for this particular network. That is subnet -subnet. I can give any range here. I will provide 10.30.0.0/24. /24 means 32 minus 24. That is 2 to the power 8. Means 256 available address. That is enough for me now. So let's create. So our network is created now. Let me connect both C1 and C2 to this custom network. For that, I can run docker network connect the network name, that is mynet, then the container name C1. So there is an error. So network spelling is wrong. So network. So C1 is connected. Similarly C2. So both the C1 and C2 containers are connected to my custom network now. Let's inspect one of the containers. So docker inspect C1. Now I will get two networks here. One is British network, that is by default. Here my IP is 0.2, 17.0.2. In mynet, my IP is 10.30.0.2. I have the C1 is available in both the network now. Similarly, if I check for C2, that is also similar. I will get two IPs, 10.30.0.3 here in mynet, and in bridge, that is 17.0.3. So now I am both the containers connect to both the networks. But I don't want that. I'm going to disconnect from my default bridge network. For that, I can run docker network opposite of connect, that is disconnect. Always network name first, that is mynet, not mynet, bridge actually. So bridge, then the container C1. So that is disconnected. C2 also disconnected. If I do one of inspect now, so I can see only mynet now, only one network, that is mynet. So that is done now. Now let me log into one of the container using docker exec one ID and C1 dash. Now if I try to ping one of the container, that is C2, I'm able to ping. So custom network is working. So now I want to connect C2 to another custom network. Let me create another network and let me add C2 to that network. We'll first exit from this container, prepare the string, then we'll create one more network, that is docker network create, and the name I will give as mynet2. Then we can add a different range here. In the import title .1.0 now and 24. So it takes one more network. Now I will disconnect C2 from mynet, then I will connect to mynet2. So disconnect it from mynet, then I will connect to mynet2. So now if I do the connect on C2, now you can see the IP is changed. It is 10.30.1.2 and there is no other network, only mynet2 is. Now let me accept into C. But here then now let me do accept into C2. Then if I try to ping my C1, I can send off that is 0.2. That is not working because both of these containers are in different custom networks now. That's why it's not working. To solve this, I can take my own custom gateway. Let me create a gateway now. For that, I will exit from C2. Then I will create using docker run and name it as -name. I'll name it as my gateway, my GW, and -d. I need a image ID. I have copied my image ID and pasted that. Also, I want to create this GW or my gateway in mynet. So -network, -network, then mynet. So let's run this now. So it created my GW container now. Let me connect this gateway to my mynet 2 also. For that, docker network connect mynet 2 to my GW. So my gateway is connected to both network 1 and network 2 now. If I do a docker inspect on my GW, I can get mynet 2 here and the IP address will be 1.3 here. And if I check on mynet, IP address will be 0.3 here. So my GW is connected to both the networks. Now let's log into my gateway. So docker exec -it my GW and bash. So if I do ping C1 from here, it is working. And similarly, if I do ping C2 also, that is working. So here from C1, C2 is not reachable, and vice versa also true. That is because both are in different network, but gateway is in both the network. That's why I'm able to ping both C1 and C2 from gateway. That's good, right? Now let me log into one of my containers C1 or C2. First I will exit from my gateway, then docker exec it, and I will log into C1. I will clear my screen, and if I try to ping my C2 IP, that is 10.30.1.2, that is not working still because both are in different network. To resolve this, I am going to add a path. Means I am going to add a IP route now. For this, I need network admin privileges. That's why I added network admin privileges while creating both the containers. Let's add IP route now. For that, I have the command IP route add, and then the subnet range of my C2, that is 10.30.1.0/24 via my network, my gateway basically. So 10.30.0.3. The meaning of this is any traffic to this particular subnet will go through via this particular gateway. Now if I try to ping C2, still it is not working. If I do a trace route to C2, first it will go to my gateway now. That is because I have added a route now. Still for ping it is not working because I am not able to get the response from C2, because in C2 also I have to add a IP route now. Let's do that now. Let's exit from C1 and log into C2. Here I have to add my IP route. I will clear my screen. Then the command is IP route add the subnet range of my C1, that is 0.0/24 via my gateway, that is 10.30.1.3. So I added the gateway now. Now I will try to ping to C1 now. For that I can run ping 10.30.0.2. So this is working now. Now I am getting the response because IP route is added in both the containers. Let's check from C1 also. Let's exit here and let's log into C1. And if I do a ping to C2 here, trace route is working, and ping also should work. Ping is also working. So that's it. I created two separate containers in separate network, and now I am able to connect from a different network also from my gateway. That's what I want to cover in this particular session. So guys, please subscribe and check out other videos too, and keep learning.